Anakaluatak. Good evening. If you have trouble processing your emotions, like I do, maybe this video will be helpful to you, because what I've been doing lately really has been working. And there are really two ways that I figured out, or that emotions tend to come out of me. The first is uncomfortable and in front of people, unexpected, and really a surprise, unwilling expression of pain. And while I definitely think that being comfortable with our emotions and being able to express them in front of people should be more acceptable and should be more the norm, it's uncomfortable. And I'm not a fan. I found it incredibly hypocritical of myself to say we should normalize crying in front of people, whilst myself being incredibly uncomfortable in doing it, and very much claiming the fact that I don't do it on purpose, and I wouldn't if I could help it. But that is the way that my emotions come out if I don't have another outlet. And this is why I think art is really, that's in a sense been the only way that I can reach my emotions sometimes. I have had trouble really understanding my emotions for a long time. We see a lot, or I see a lot online about you have to process your emotions, it'll get stuck in your body. I haven't read the book, but I reference it a lot. It's The Body Keeps Score. So I've heard mixed reviews on it, but really the main idea of the book is that if you're not processing, then your body will hold on to it. It stores the energy, and in a sense it can cause illnesses, ailments. I've tried therapy, and I have trouble, I think, being vulnerable in front of others on purpose. Happens on accident plenty, but on purpose. Maybe it has to do with the level of trust. I haven't been able to find somebody that I trust enough to really feel vulnerable. I haven't been asked the right questions. Whatever the reason may be, it's few and far between that I've been able to really reach down and feel. But when I do art, when I write a song, or when I write poetry, that really has been the only way, because I've tried journaling as well. That was one of the first things that I tried when people who were really close to me in my life kept pushing the idea that I'm traumatized. Because we all grew up together. We knew each other's situations. And I had always really had this idea that I'm not traumatized. I think I had a difficult childhood, but I don't feel traumatized by it. And so those who grew up very close to me, and in many cases in the same environments, continue to question that assessment and my self-evaluation. And I really tried to look for that. I tried to find the trauma that they seem to really think that I held. And I couldn't. The only thing I could with journaling really reach as far as my emotions and be able to like pull out the tears and the ache was when I was writing about my bout with alcoholism. That seemed to be the only time that, or maybe not the only time, but the main thing that I was able to reach through journaling. While my therapist, when I asked her to give me an idea of where I was at, she said that I intellectualize my emotions. I don't think that's the term that I'm looking for. Maybe it is. She said that I intellectualize my experiences. I would agree with that. I tend to really analyze and, in a sense, dismiss my own, justified feelings, because I very much empathize and understand, and I can see where the other people or the other parties in the situation were coming from, and I find it very easy to understand. Even if I've been wronged, I can see how they got there. And so it's hard to hold them or be angry with them in a sense. but at the same time, I'm dismissing my own emotions. And so that's kind of been my experience with emotions. I've regularly said, I wonder if my emotions are broken, because I didn't seem to feel emotions the same way that other people did. I had like a range like this, whereas other people in my life just had this much larger range. And so I thought maybe there was something wrong with me, or it came up regularly to a point where I had various theories as to why that was. One being that I had experienced such a wide range of emotions when I was younger that by comparison, what I was experiencing as I got older wasn't bringing me to those levels. And maybe that has something to do with it. But I also identify as neurodivergent. I'm undiagnosed, but I relate a lot to autistic tendencies and ADHD tendencies. And there's something so validating about seeing others who have similar experiences. If I'm experiencing them in isolation, it just feels like there's something wrong with me. This is what I appreciate about short form content. I started to search out the content, and it was incredibly validating because I struggled with such simple things. And now I use that knowledge as a way to kind of gauge and see where I am with my mental health. Like right now, I will gauge it by two main things. Well, three. The first is opening mail. If I'm not doing well, I'm not opening my mail. The second is how much mental energy, how much do I have to hype myself up to go to the grocery store, to go do something simple, a quick trip to the grocery store. And then the third is how much energy, how much do I have to hype myself up, how much toll does it take to make a phone call. Usually this relates to like a phone call to, making an appointment, or, I organize for a living, like I'm a community organizer. And so part of that is talking to venues and payments and travel and all of those things. So I much prefer the email version of that, but a lot of times you have to make a phone call. And that could be, there was a point in time when that was really, really challenging for me. It was a very taxing task to do, to make those kinds of phone calls. When I process through art, it's such a different experience. It's so easy to reach those emotions, and I'll tell you why I think that is. The first is, through art, I don't have to censor myself. This is an expression, this is an artistic piece, it's almost like a pass to be my most dramatic self. So I don't have to be super understanding of the other person. I don't have to intellectualize the situation. I get to feel my feelings because it hurt, because I was wronged. In that, there was so much, it was like a floodgate of freedom in being able to reach the emotions that I'd really been trying to reach for a while. I'd wanted to process them. I'd wanted to sort of flush them out of my emotional body, out of my physical body. I don't know how well I've done at flushing, but I can say that some of the content that I've come across recently and how to process emotion has been incredibly helpful, because a lot of people talk about processing emotions, and not a lot of people will give clear instructions on how to do that. How do you do that? I'm still a little bit confused, but I think that I understand it more now, a lot more now than I did before, in that my method, I suppose, it's almost like a meditation. It's not a meditation, it's really just sitting with it and allowing. My tendency, I think, had been to start intellectualizing, coming up with reasons, coming up with excuses, coming up with a bunch of various contributing factors that had nothing to do with how I felt. It had to do with the situation. It had to do with understanding others, but allowing myself to feel how I was feeling was such a shift, because I didn't I didn't know how to do that before. I didn't know that just sitting with them and allowing them and being accepting, and in a sense telling myself, like, that internal voice, like, it's okay to feel this way. I don't have to demonize myself. I don't have to criticize myself. I don't have to undermine my own feelings simply because I understand the perspective of the other parties. Part of this, I think, was an aha moment when I was in dialectical behavioral therapy. And the image that really helped me was, there's like these two circles, and one is your emotions, and one is the more sterile, like what happened, and I forget what the label is for this one, but somewhere in here they overlap. And somehow that visual helped me to understand that I do not have to have a reason to feel the way that I feel. I don't need to justify that to someone else, especially in close relationships. It was an aha moment for me that I didn't need to justify my boundaries. I didn't need to justify the fact that this hurts my feelings. And I'll give an example. I have a friend, and I can relate to her in this. She says that her partner, when they're driving, and he'll pull up like right next to window next to the person, to the car next to them, and that makes her really uncomfortable. She doesn't like it, and I can 100% relate to that. Well, he, as we're talking about it, he's like, I just don't get it. I don't understand what the big deal is. He wasn't, I don't think, trying to be dismissive or trying to be hurtful or trying to be anything. He just didn't think about it. And so the regular reminder that she had to say, hey, I don't like that. Hey, I don't like that. Hey, I don't like that. He, I think, in his own way, felt a little exasperated with it, while she, in her own way, was feeling a little exasperated with it. In my head, that was the perfect example of, you don't need to understand. I don't need to justify it to you. We're in a relationship, and I know you care about me. This is something that it costs you nothing to just try and remember to do this little thing. Stop either a little before or a little after, so we're not directly sitting side by side next to the person. So to me, that was maybe one of the best examples that I could articulate, because I couldn't even give you a great example right now of a boundary and what I'm talking about. I'm giving you an example of someone else's life. So when I write poetry, when I write a song, and here's the catch with that part, is because when I put my emotions into music, I find it very challenging to play that music for other people without exhibiting that emotion, which to me indicates that I'm still processing, right? There's a lot of emotions there. I still am working through it, and that's okay. But it brings up another question of, am I just beating this like excessively, or do I have to continuously process this in these micro moments, I suppose? Like, I assume there will be at some point a time when I can sing and perform these songs without tearing up, without getting emotional, just being able to perform them. I feel like, yes, that's happening. I do feel the waning of the emotions in some of these songs with some of these topics. To a certain degree, I can't perform them, and that's okay. One day, I do perform them, and then I cry, and then it's embarrassing, and so there's that piece. I could just keep doing that, but at this point, I'm just like, okay, maybe I'll not perform that song until I've processed that emotion a little bit more. But with poetry, that's not typically something that I read to other people, but it is a very powerful way to really even reach how I truly feel about something. Because when I'm journaling, when I'm talking to a therapist, when I'm talking to my friends, these situations very much come out in a way that I aim to be fair to everyone in the situation. So there's a lot of filters of like, yes, I feel this way. Yes, this is what happens and that's what's going on. But this is what they were going through. This is their perspective. Versus when I'm writing a poem, it's got full creative freedom to express my emotions, to just focus on my perspective. And what I will say, the benefit of being able to have our emotions in front of others is that vulnerability does create a bond. It opens a door. I'll give you an example of when this was modeled to me in such a beautiful way. There was a group of us that went into the Arctic of Alaska. We went into the refuge and we all camped and connected, and many of us didn't even know who the other people were when we all got there. It was a mix of activists and indigenous elders and youth and teachers, and it was just this mix of people who cared about the land. My aunt was one of the first people to open up this talking circle that we were having. And this is us starting to get to know each other. And she was so vulnerable, and she talked about her insecurities about the color of her skin. I think a lot of people of color can relate to that experience. And then she talked about her alcoholism. She was incredibly vulnerable about her experience as an Indigenous woman. And that really opened the door for all of the shares that came after to talk about the hardships, the challenges, the pain that we all had experienced. And so in that moment, I recognized the beauty and the power of opening the door, giving ourselves and others permission to express the pain. And there's something healing about doing that with others. I just prefer to do it on my own. I do prefer to do it on my own. But that doesn't mean that I can't process it on my own and still share the meaning of that with others. And really that's just my experience with processing my emotions, with reaching my emotions, because I find it incredibly challenging. I, for a while, would watch a sad movie, or I would read something. I was usually watch a sad movie. I know I have this emotion, I'm feeling these emotions, but I'm unable to reach them, and I need like a release valve. So I would watch a sad movie, or, I think maybe a couple of times I went and reread a sad passage of a book or something like that, but I basically would go and look for something to make me cry, to have some sort of release. It feels a lot healthier to be able to do it through art. Essentially, what I'm trying to get at is, if you have trouble reaching your emotions, if therapy, talking to friends, even journaling isn't really doing it for you, maybe trying some sort of art form in order to release. What's worked for me mostly has been poetry and writing music. And it doesn't have to be like rhyming poetry. There's some really beautiful YouTube channels where the person basically puts out a poem, but it's just like a really eloquent and thought out way of expressing these thoughts and feelings. And it's very much presented as a stream of thought. It's not like rhymey. There might be some sort of cadence that is supposed to, improve. Oof. I don't know how long that wasn't recording for. I think my battery is dying, so that might be my sign to end the video. Anyhow, hopefully this helps somebody. I know it helped me when I figured it out on my own and got a bunch of little different small chunks that all contributed to what I'm starting to develop as a holistic way of managing and processing my own emotions. So good luck on your journey with that, and sending so much love.